All right, FloTrack here at the Paris Olympics, and we have a very special guest with us today. We have James Corrigan, who is part of the men's 3K steeplechase contingent here at the Olympics. Crazy that you're here, you know, you kind of have a cool story. You had to qualify like at the last minute to get here. You're from BYU, and thanks again for taking some time to chat with us.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to be here for more than one reason, but
exactly. Okay, now first off, I know I was asking you like how long you've been in the village here and like what you've been up to this past week. So now we're about, just a couple days into the track stuff. What are your first impressions? Like, how's Paris been? Like, how's it been so far?
it's been pretty insane. I wasn't actually prepared for how crazy it would be. I feel like I can't walk anywhere without seeing somebody I know, and I think because of that, it's really fun, but also kind of hectic. And so being able to leave for a little bit to get some altitude training in and then coming back was really peaceful. But it's a good problem to have when you keep recognizing famous people and you get a little distracted in a good way.
Okay, who's the top celebrity you've seen so far, like famous athlete, or anyone really?
All the NBA guys were on the boat, and I was pretty close to them and got to pass by and say hi to some of them. So I mean, you got like LeBron, Steph, Ant, KD, and then Simone Biles was pretty cool. It was the most nonchalant way I've seen Simone Biles. We were in the athletic center together, and I passed her and I did a double take and I completely froze, and I should have said good luck, but Simone, if you're watching this by some weird reason, then good luck, or congrats, I should say.
That's awesome. And then, you said this is your first time in Paris too, or
yeah.
First time out of the country too, so like what's that been like?
First time out of the country. It's been pretty cool. I think traveling across the U.S., you get a good taste for, there's so much diversity in the U.S. to begin with, and so it just feels like I'm on another travel trip. I'm trying to tell myself that. But it's pretty cool when all of a sudden you're talking to somebody and they don't speak your language and you're like, oh, I am in Switzerland, or I am in Paris. So it's pretty cool.
I know that's something we've had not an issue with, but the language barrier, it's kind of crazy to kind of adjust to, but I'm glad you're enjoying your time so far. Now, I know we're still a little bit out from the 3K steeplechase competition, but I think we got to, obviously the big story here, I think we got to take it back to the Olympic trials, right? Like, I think you were almost one of the most compelling storylines coming out of the trials. I mean, you take third in that men's 3K steeplechase final. However, you didn't have the standard, so you had to go race for that 8:15 standard to even make it to the Olympics. Track and field's weird necessarily. It's not always top three that gets to go to Paris, right? So yeah. I want to first go back to the Olympic trials. You were going into the trials after finishing 9th, I believe, at NCAAs. You had a week or two break, and then you go into the trials. Like, how did you kind of, reset from that NCAA final to then go into the trials?
Yeah, I think I just carried the same mindset that I had all season, which was just, I know I've got a lot more in me, and I kept telling myself that. And I know on paper, people saw 9th at NCAAs to 3rd at the trials, and they're like, where's the, the disconnect there? But I think internally, I'd had the same mindset the entire time, and I think I had the capacity to win NCAAs. I think that was there. But a lack of experience definitely made it difficult. And so the way I looked at it was, I still have a lot more in the tank. I know I haven't been able to show everything, and part of that's just experience that I need. So I felt very confident going in, and I don't think there was a moment that I was scared. If anything, it was just even more exciting because less people knew me. And so it feels good to have that underdog mentality, and just not only do I feel like I have a lot more to give, it wasn't always, not everything was shown during the season, but also I have a huge, underdog mentality coming into the trials.
So take me through that then, the kind of the rounds at trials, right? Using that underdog mentality, right? Like, yeah. Going from, the first round to then the finals, like, how did you continue on and build that momentum going into that final? Yeah,
the prelim was huge for me. I mean, I felt confident. I told myself I'm going to qualify, and it's just the attitude you have to have when you want to qualify in a competitive race. But making all those passes in the prelim kind of caught me off guard a little bit because it's different when you're actually doing it, and so passing some of these guys in the prelim, I was like, oh my goodness, should I be here? That really gave me a lot of confidence in for the final, because I told myself if I've done it once, I can do it again. And I think just treating everybody like they're competitors in a race, and I cannot race anybody.
Then we get to the final, you're on the line, then it starts, you're going lap by lap. Like, what are you telling yourself throughout that race? And then, take me up into that moment where you cross the finish line in third.
Yeah, I was definitely telling myself I can win. And I know, I didn't win, obviously. Third was a win for me. But
I think that's still a win. That's still a win.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's what my coach always says, is third is first in that case, right, for qualifications. And so every move I had to tell myself, you're doing this because you're trying to win. And so racing to win really helped me get to where I needed to be and make the necessary passes and be patient.
Once you cross that finish line, I think there's a bunch of photos out there of you after you're crossing the finish line. I love it's like your hands are on your head and you're just like complete shock. And then I think you went over to Kenneth Rooks and he was like, what place you get? And you were like, third? Like, you looked almost confused in a way. Like, how did I just get third? Like, Just take me through, like, what were you feeling in that moment, like, you know, just in those seconds just after realizing that, hey, I could potentially go to the Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, starting from like 100 meters left, I think you're in race mode 100%. So you're not thinking about anything except for go, 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 gas, gas, gas. But then with 100 and then 90 and then 80, I was like starting to realize, first of all, I had enough room that I was going to get third, as long as I didn't fall. But on top of that, I was like, my mind just started churning. I was like, oh my goodness, like, what does this mean? I could literally go to the Olympics. And so the moment I crossed the line, it was, what? That is crazy, that is insane. And so I think the emotional side of it was a shock all over my face. And being able to tell Kenneth that I got third was huge because, you know, a season previous, we were in cross country together as college athletes, and I finished 2 spots ahead of him at nationals, and I got to turn around and hug him. And so it was pretty cool to be able to do the same thing when he was a pro, and I was getting to join him and kind of learn the ropes from him. So it was really special.
Now, you know, obviously you took third, and like I mentioned earlier, you didn't have the standard, right? So for you to make the team, you had to get the standard, basically, which was 8:15. You ran 8:21 at trials.
Yeah.
So then, you know, obviously, like, reality sets in maybe a little bit, right? Like, afterwards, what are you and your support staff, your coach, like, you know, obviously now I think there was only a week window for you to get that mark. Like, what then were the next steps to try to be like, okay, hey, let's see if we can get you the standard?
Yeah, I mean, it came down, I'd like to say I played a bigger role, but it was honestly like my coach is saying, hey, enjoy the next 24 or 48 hours, celebrate it. If everything ended right now, like, be proud of the fact that you did what you had to do on the day that it mattered. So I celebrated that, and in the meantime, they were working in the background. I mean, it came down to Ray, my agent, both my coach and assistant coach, and Todd, who's a great friend of BYU and runner himself, and he stepped forward and was willing to help pay for a pacer, and so they tried to find a race. I mean, within 10 minutes of me crossing the line, I had already heard little tidbits of, hey, there might be a chance we can find you a race. There's like 2 possibilities. One's halfway across the world, and probably not going to do that. And the other one's the United States, and it was a small all-comers meet in Pennsylvania. The next day, they had everything figured out, it seemed like, and I was like, how did you guys get all this done? So I'd like to say I played a bigger role or knew more about what was going on, but my coaches took that on themselves and did a great job in just acting quickly.
Like you mentioned, you know, the race you ended up doing was at the Penn Relay Summer Showcase. You now travel to Philadelphia to go compete, and you know you're getting ready. Like you mentioned, you had a pacer there to help you through 2,000 meters, I believe. What were you telling yourself? What were the people around you telling you going into that race to really pump you up and get you psyched to go after it?
It's interesting. I felt like I was 100% confident leading up to it. Like from the moment that I knew what I had to do, all the way until the day before the race, nothing changed. Like I didn't feel any extra pressure. I felt like it was doable. And I think part of that was just how calm my coaches were with me. And I felt fine until the day before. And I think it set in heavy, all the pressure when I was just getting flooded with DMs and calls and people just letting me know that they were either going to be there, which was shocking to me, or just, you know, wishing me the best. I think all of that pressure on a good side, right? Like my coach says, pressure's a privilege, but it really set in heavy, and I realized that it wasn't that I didn't think I could do it, but the idea that if I didn't do it, I didn't want to let people down, all kind of culminated the night before. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I got to get off social media, turn off my phone, like just really lock in. And so for that next 12, 15 hours from the night before leading up to the race, it was all about just being calm. I trusted that based off my training, I could do it. Based off my workouts, it showed that I had the capacity to. And so when we lined up, everything kind of went away and I was good to go. I will say, I was doing really well again. And then I got into the stadium and there were all these little kids there with signs and stuff. And I was like, oh man, like that's gonna do it. And so luckily once the gun goes off, I'm always fine. So worked out.
All right. Like you said, gun goes off, you're fine. You have pacer Dan Mikulski there with you, I believe. Mm-hmm. All right, so take me, lap by lap, how you're just sticking there, staying locked in. Obviously there are people there supporting you, which I'm sure helped a lot. I guess take me through a little bit of like what it was like, running that first 2K with the pacer, and then once he stepped off, like how you're able to lock in on the job at hand.
When the race started off, I knew that this wasn't going to be a classic go to the back, work my way up, or be in lane 2, lane 3 kind of race. We prepped it so that I would be right on Dan and also not have to run an extra inch. I would be right on the rail. But one of the things that gave me a lot of confidence coming into this race was the fact that I'd run most of my entire races in lane 2, and often going out to lane 3 to hurdle. And that's just, something to make sure that I stay clear and I don't trip. That's, more important than sometimes even getting a little more ground is just making sure you don't trip. And so that was going to be a huge factor. And so I think those first couple laps, it was all just about stay on the inside on the rail and just clip Dan's heels. You should be right there. And I told myself that I was racing Dan, and I think that helped a lot because
Yeah.
if I mean, in the steeple, in most events alone, it's hard to stay right on a pacer. It's just difficult, and it's easy to slip. And so in a steeple, I knew I had to be extra on it because sometimes my hurdles aren't the best, and so it'd mean that I'd have to quickly get back because anytime that you even give an inch, it can turn into a mile. And so I think those first couple laps, I was just so bent on staying right on Dan that they flew by. So the first 3 laps are great. When we came through a mile, I knew that Dan was originally supposed to go through a mile, but he said that if he was feeling good, he'd go through 2K. When he was locked in, we came through the mile a second under pace, and that was like the greatest relief ever because as well as I was feeling, I knew that my body was running faster than it ever had and was being pushed to its limits. And so even if I was feeling smooth, knowing that I would have to turn it over to try to drop time at the end did not sound very fun. And so being a second under pace felt great. And then when Dan stepped off and I took over, I felt really, really good. And with 2 laps to go, I definitely started like feeling some fatigue, and I could tell that I needed a little more effort per hurdle to get over. But I will say that I just felt super, super smooth. And that was what was important to me is no matter how tired I was, if I could stay smooth, I knew I was going to run the time. And then with a lap to go, I was like, oh my goodness, I can run 65. I got that. And so I like couldn't contain it, which is a terrible thing to do in a steeple because I have 5 opportunities to mess it up. And then I came around the last water jump, and I could tell I was tired because I kind of stumbled on that last jump there. I didn't have as much ground as I wanted to. But then coming into the home stretch, I probably had one of the cleanest hurdles I've ever run. I don't know how. I think it was just everybody screaming their heads off, and crossing the line was just relief. That's the only word I can think of. It was great.
Tell me like what that moment was finally like. Like, okay, finally I officially checked the box. Like, I'm going to Paris.
Yeah, it was a fantastic feeling. I immediately like ran over and started high-fiving the line of people that were there. Everyone was like over the railing, and it was awesome because someone actually had some of the, like a flag with the Olympic rings on it, and they tossed it down to me, and that was a cool moment because I was like, finally I can say I'm going 100%, I can let that soak in, and even in the moment it's never going to fully set in. I think it took a couple weeks to really set in that I was going to the Olympics and what that meant.
And once you book your ticket to Paris, it's like, all right, now it's like you got to lock in and get prepared for the Olympics. Like, what did that preparation look like for you, and how are you feeling going into your competition here?
Yeah, it was difficult. I'd say like training's been amazing right now and I'm feeling locked in, but the period after the trials and then after Pennsylvania, I came back and I wasn't necessarily training with a team and I wasn't necessarily like done training, but it was kind of a weird period where I was still doing workouts and I might be doing it with one person or alone or maybe 2 people, but it was a very different vibe than I'm used to, and it's also way longer than I've ever had to compete for a season. And so my body was definitely feeling it. I took a couple days off, but being back here, like across some seas, has been great. Training in Switzerland was amazing just to get some peace and quiet, and then coming back here and getting some adrenaline pumping. We're gonna do a workout after this. Like, I'm feeling locked in, ready to go, and I think that I have the same fitness, if not more, than I did when I ran the Pennsylvania race. So, looking forward to the race. I'm thinking it's gonna definitely take a PR to make it through the final. At least that's the attitude I'm having. I'm prepped to run under 8:10. If it happens, it happens. If not, we'll get it next year, and I'm excited.
That's right. And I know you mentioned too, like, it's been kind of cool for you, right? Because you have such a big BYU contingent here with you on Team USA. Like,
yeah.
How does that almost add a sense of, like, I don't know if hominess is the right word, but, some sort of comfort in a way to know that you have a big support crew here as well?
Yeah, it's huge. It feels like I'm on one of my classic college trips in the best way possible. Like,
yeah.
I just have people I can hang out with. I'm rooming with Clayton, who's a BYU alumni. Now I get to train with him, which is pretty awesome. I get to go on runs with him, and having him as my roommate is super nice. I feel like I can relax a little bit more than I would have if I had been coming alone. And so having those guys and knowing that, every couple hours I'll see at least one BYU guy is pretty cool. It just feels like we're a team that just happened to travel out to the Olympics together,
That's for sure. That's really cool to say. Not many people get to have that opportunity, so that's really cool. I think lastly, maybe just putting everything together. I know you mentioned earlier, last year at NCAA's, you didn't even make it to NCAA's in the 3K steeple, and then a year later, here you are on Team USA at the Olympics competing in that same event. Have you thought about that at all? Reflecting on your journey and how far you've come since then, or even before that, before college and stuff, to where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. Again, on paper, this shouldn't have happened. But I think in high school, I ran very, very low mileage, and so I was anticipating a big jump in college. It was something that was an intentional decision. So I'm grateful that it all happened the way it did. But even from last year to this year, I had a lot of goals for myself, and as things started to progress and very quickly, I wasn't shocked necessarily, but I was pleasantly surprised with how fast they were happening. And then I think when things escalated to the level they did, that was a little shocking for sure. But I think all along I knew that I was going to get better, and I knew that the work I was putting in was going to lead to big jumps. And so it wasn't as shocking as it was just, I don't know what the best word is for this, but just like satisfying, like, there it is. That was the thing I was looking for, you know. I'm sure someone can think of a better word than I just used. But yeah, it was almost like all the puzzle pieces were there, and they just kind of lined up. And so those expectations for myself to get better were there, but certainly not on that timeline.
Well, James, I know we and the people in the U.S. are going to be cheering for you when you get on that start line in the men's 3K steeplechase very soon. Thanks again for taking the time to sit down with us and just share your story, because I think it's just such a compelling one of the best from the Olympic trials.
Thank you so much for having me.